continuing our series on marriage and relationships uncensored. And today we're going to be talking about stress. We're going to talk about the stresses that come with relationships, how to deal with those. And one of the biggest stresses that anyone can encounter, I believe, in a marriage is some of the stuff the military will throw at you in the area of deployments and stuff like that. So I thought we'd start out today, and we're going to take about 10 minutes or so, and we're going to talk to a couple about that aspect of life and surviving that. I've got Joe and Emma Martin here. If you don't know, Joe is one of our elders, and Emma is on staff as our director of our Next Generation Ministries, and they are a huge part of the church, and they have been in the military basically your entire married life, right? Yes, and so it's, how many?
16 years.
16 years, and Joe was 12 at that point in time, because from the looks of things.
I was 10.
She was 10, so you know they've been at it a while. And how many deployments have you guys gone through?
We've been through 7 deployments, total about 60 months, a little over 60 months.
So 5 years out of your married life as you've been gone. That sounds challenging. A little bit. Okay. What's the hardest part? What's when you deal with the deployment, either coming, going, during? What's the hardest part for you guys over the course of time?
Well, I think for me the hardest part was it's really easy for me to focus in on my mission, what I'm doing while I'm over there, and it's easy to forget some of the things that she goes through and some of the things the kids are going through. So it creates a little bit of a separation there. So I think the hardest part for me has been to remember to communicate with her and have some empathy on what she might be going through and not just focus on everything I'm doing.
Okay.
I would say the hardest part is to basically express how you feel in the moments of being separated, from your spouse. And I would say not having a community strong enough if it's not planned at the home front.
Okay. And you guys have 4 kids. They range in ages from
15, 14, 10, and 9.
So there's no stress there at all.
No.
And thankfully, I know your kids very well because I've known you guys for a long time, and they're all real passive, calm, obedient, non-strong-willed children at all, right? Because they're nothing like
easygoing.
They're easygoing, laid back. No. So you've got 4 good, strong-willed kids. I'm not saying anything negative. You got good kids, but they are individual. They're challenging, and so each time in a deployment, you've got that challenge of you're over here on your mission, and she's on her mission, and she's not supposed to tell you about her mission because her job is to support your mission. Does that make sense?
Hard to balance those two.
Hard to balance that too, okay? What's the best advice you ever got about dealing with these deployments as a family?
I'll go first. The best advice I got was, I don't even know where it came from. It was to focus on when he comes back from deployment to reconnect, making sure we're taking time for each other. Date nights, I was pretty strict about it. Every 2 weeks, we have a date because I think that distance you grow from each other, you have to reconnect. I mean, you grow too as a person. So you have to find each other again, not like some romantic, but like, really discover each other again.
Yeah, I think the best advice that I've lost my mic. Hello? All right. I think the best advice I've ever gotten, really more something I've just learned over time, is that, I deploy, I have a team. I have a group of people that support me and I support them, and we work together and we go through things together and we bond together. And I need to make sure that she has that also. I'm not going to necessarily find her friends for her, but just the idea that I support that and that I help her find that support base and that support group that she has as well, so that she's not out there by herself. Because ultimately, it's not the military's job to do that for our spouses. Even though they have resources they give us and they encourage us to reach out and do those things, it's not their job. It's my job to make sure my family's taken care of. So
did you hear that?
That's probably.
Make sure let's pause, rewind. You heard that. It is not the military's job to strengthen your family while you're deployed. It's yours. Because I know I know just being a guy, I can go to a conference for 3 days and I just completely forget I have a family for 3 days because I'm in this zone, and it's like, no, it's even when you're away, it's still your job. They're not going to do it. You have to do it, right? I'm gonna make sure you heard that. So, good point. Thanks. Okay. Now, anytime with the military, they do a good job, solid job, supporting you and encouraging and providing things. But there's stuff that they don't say or they can't say or they won't say. There's like the deployment playbook. You're going to do this, this, and this. How have you guys learned? What have you guys learned that's different from the official playbook as to how you're supposed to deal with these things, so that you can, as a couple, continue to grow and as a family be the family you need to be?
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily the unit that encourages this, but there's the idea that I don't need to hear the things that she's going through because I won't be able to focus on what I'm doing, and it'll distract me. And you can't be distracted in a combat situation. But ultimately, it's my family that we're talking about. It's my team, and it's something that I should be just as focused on as I am the guys I have overseas. So she should be able to tell me what's going on at home. She should be able to confide in me, and make sure that I need to make sure that I can listen to that and I can support those things that she's telling me.
I'll just add to that from my side. I think we're not saying we're having a hard time and I'm needing to come home and stuff like that. It's more of listening. Are we listening to one another and making sure we're leaving that communication open? That is it okay for me to have a hard time over here? I do have 4 kids. I have full job. I have school. So I should be able to express that, and we shouldn't have to be told, or I'm not going to be told that I can't feel like this is hard, basically. Okay.
Yeah. It's one of the things that we've discovered as a church is when I first got here, I'm not military, and we got here and we started the church. One of the things that I was like, here's what we're going to do. When a couple deploys, we're going to bring the guy up front, and we're going to pray for him, and we're going to put our hands on him, we're going to pray for him, and then we're going to be so helpful to the wives, we're going to be in their business all the time. And 2 things happened immediately. The guys quit telling me they were deploying, and they'd say on the way out, oh, by the way, I'm leaving Tuesday. That's what they do. And the women were like, leave me alone. Just leave me alone. I got this. And so our first learning was, okay, military women are pretty strong, but like you're saying though, some of that, there's the part that's the real strength that every one of them has, but there's also they're almost told to mask the real pain, the real anxiety, the real problems, and you've learned not to do that. Tell them how you learned.
I did that.
Yeah, or just a piece of that.
What I was doing was relying on the people to tell me, basically, putting expectations on us that we can't bear. And we can't bear that because we're trying to be the helpmate to our spouse, and we're kind of not doing that job when they're gone. So that's really what God was showing me, it is okay for you to feel this way because he is separated, and you need to acknowledge that, and but still embrace the moment you're in. You know what I mean? This is the struggles and we're going to face. Just be more open with it.
More open and don't try to be alone, and don't try to be the strongest human being in the world.
Yeah. So I can tend to be by myself a lot, and just go through life and plow through it. But I discovered that God told me I needed to place strong people around me that shield me and to be with me in life to handle the times that he was gone.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys. We'll give them a hand. Great. And let me add one piece to that. That when these 2 talk, I didn't bring up 2 people just randomly. I'm talking about met Joe and Emma. Can we figure out how long ago that was? 7 or 8 years ago, when Joe just sort of wandered in during the week and said, I want to talk about religious stuff or something. And so, and I'm serious. And so this is a couple that, through all those deployments, has managed to grow a strong marriage with the challenges that are marriage normal. And they've done a pretty good job raising 4 kids so far. And they've been managed to grow spiritually to the point that when they started out, it was not like Emma wasn't applying for a job on staff when she walked in the door, and Joe was not saying, hey, I want to be an elder. They were getting their feet wet, figuring out the faith in different ways and growing, and they've managed to grow spiritually, emotionally, physically during that time frame. So I wanted to hear somebody who's actually in the struggle, made it work, okay, who's managed, they're spiritually farther along than they were when we started. Does that make sense? So that should be an encouragement to those of you who are struggling, who are younger, going, I don't think we can pull it. It can be done. Okay, it can be done. And we're going to talk today about some of the stuff that's crucial. And if this is what we're going to talk about, we're going to be in Titus chapter 2, if you want to turn there while I'm saying this. Titus chapter 2, that you will face stress. Now, some of you are facing military stress, like Barry said. The majority of our church are military people. It's not them and us. It's we're all us together, and a high percentage of us are military, whether we started out that way or not. Okay, and you're going to face stresses in relationships. You're going to face stresses if you're military and if you're not military. Okay, so I just wanted to use that as that's like a really heavy-duty stress. But when we're talking about the stresses that come from just being in a relationship or the stress from being single, all those stresses, we're going to talk about that today in Titus 2. Let me go ahead and read you this. Paul's written to a young pastor named Titus, talking about how to lead his church. He says, as for you, Titus, promote the kind of living that reflects wholesome teaching. Teach the older men to exercise self-control, to be worthy of respect, and to live wisely. They must have sound faith and be filled with love and patience. Similarly, teach the older women to live in a way that honors God. They must not slander others or be heavy drinkers. Instead, they should teach others what is good. These older women must train the younger women to love their husbands and their children, to live wisely and be pure, to work in their homes, to do good, and to be submissive to their husbands. Then they will not bring shame on the word of God. In the same way, encourage the young men to live wisely. So he's pretty much taking everybody in the community of faith, in the church, and saying, okay, we've got older women, we've got older men, younger men. And here's how we want them to interact, and here's what our expectations are. And I'm going to pull three things out of there, and they're really deep theology. Each one of them, you're going to have to learn, I'll help you spell all the words we're doing, but it's heavy-duty theology. And the first point, you ready? I think you'll know these words. You ready? First point, don't be stupid. Okay, don't be stupid. Now, if you look back in the passage we just read, there was one phrase that just kept popping up. It said, live wisely. Told older men, live wisely. Told older women, teach the younger women to live wisely. And for the young men, it said, live wisely. Don't be stupid. Matter of fact, that same word for live wisely is in 2 Timothy 1:7, same Greek word. It says, for God has not given us a spirit of fearfulness, but one of power, love, and sound judgment. Sometimes the word's even translated as self-control. Now here's the thing. When you are under stress, what part of your brain wants to take over? If you say you've got two parts to your brain. You've got your emotional part and your intellectual logical part. When you're under stress, which part starts screaming for attention? The emotional part starts saying, we need to do this, we need to do this, we need to do this. Let me ask you a question. In your life experience, how many times has your emotional brain given you good advice? Do you look back at your life at all the times you've had a stress, all the things you've been through, where you looked at it and you said, you know what, I am so glad I listened to my emotional brain right there. Because my logical brain was saying to do this, but my emotional brain was saying do this, and I am so happy I listened to my emotional brain. Anybody ever have that happen a single time in your life? No. That's why it says self-control. The concept is this, that when you are under stress, you have your emotional brain saying one thing, your logical brain saying something else, and you have to have the self-control to live wisely by listening to your logical brain and doing what it says instead of your emotional brain. Like you've got, if your boss you're upset at your boss, what's your emotional brain want to do? I'm going to stomp in his office. I'm going to slam my resignation down on his desk. I'm going to call him every word I can think of. I'm going to get my thesaurus and find some more. I'm going to go to urbandictionary.com and find some really creative ways to call him names. And that is what your emotional brain says for you to do. How often is that a good idea? But here's the thing, we get in this stress situation and we start hearing our emotional brain screaming at the top of its lungs, do this, react, react, react. And every time we listen to it, we regret it. So were you in the stressful situation In any part of your life, in your relationship, in your marriage, your emotional brain starts yelling. And the thing is, the emotional stuff, you ever notice it builds up? It grows like, oh, the toilet seat's up. I shouldn't do anything about that. Click. Shouldn't do anything about that. Shouldn't do anything about that. Midnight surprise. And then what happens? Boom! Right? Then comes the explosion because you let it build up, you weren't dealing with it logically, you were dealing with it emotionally, and suddenly, boom, there it goes. Which brings us to the second piece in this puzzle. You need to, don't be stupid, need to own your stuff. Own your stuff. Told you, deep theology. Romans 12:3 uses that exact same Greek word we've been talking about. It says, "For the grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment." That means real life, honest-to-goodness honesty about yourself and your situation. See, here's what everybody tells you to do. When something's wrong and you're under stress, you should, don't worry, be happy. Oh, okay. So when things are stressing me out, what I need to do is to turn off my logical brain and turn off my emotional brain and choose an emotion that does not fit the circumstances. That's going to work. Except that it doesn't work at all, does it? He's saying very clearly, the Bible teaches very clearly, you look at your life, you analyze what your stressors are, and you admit it and acknowledge it, and you don't pretend to be somebody that you're not. The world tells you, be strong, be strong, be strong. There are times you're not feeling strong. There are times you're stressed. And you've got two different kinds of stresses and concerns that you need to be honest about. You've got some of them where you need to relax a little bit. There are some stresses that your emotional brain is bringing on you that you don't need because they're not worth stressing over because they're not possible. Let me give you an example. How many of you, let's go with the people who've raised children. You've got children who are grown and out of the house. You have those. How many of you raised a perfect child? How many of your children, there is nothing wrong with you have the ultimate in perfect children? Huh. Now, let's zip it back in to you younger parents. And something's going on, and what are you afraid is going to happen? I am going to screw up my kids. Any of you guys, young kids, you are terrified you're going to screw up your kids. Well, let me take some stress off. Yes, you are. You are going to screw them up. The same way your parents screwed you up and the same way their parents screwed them up. You're a screwed up person. It is genetic. You are going to pass that down to your kids. Okay? This concept that somehow you can raise absolutely. Last week we talked about the concept of body image and how a lot of women buy into this concept that they can, if they work hard enough at it, they can have the perfect body image. They can look just exactly perfect. And said, you're never going to attain that. Or you're never going to attain perfect kids because perfect kids would take perfect parents. And we ain't got none of them. Right? So you're going to screw them up. But they're a lot more resilient than you think they are. Nikki, my first child, she was born, it was a long labor, really long labor, so she had to spend one night in NICU because she gotten some stuff in her lungs during the thing. And she comes out, and I am looking at the most fragile thing I have ever seen in my life. When this little baby came out, this looked like, oh my goodness. I mean, you ever seen baby giraffes when they're first born? Videos of that? And how fragile those things look up there. And you're going, if there's a stiff breeze, it's going to break into three pieces. It's going to get knocked down. It's going to shatter. And I look at my daughter, and she looks more fragile than a baby giraffe. And I'm going, oh my gosh, I am so going to break that. There is no way that I cannot break that little fragile thing that just came out that's saying, right, there's no way. And I'm watching, and this child is about to be taken to the NICU, the nursery intensive care unit thing. And a nurse reaches over and grabs that fragile little new life by the ankle and picks it up. After I stopped screaming, I realized something. This child is not as fragile as I thought she was. And when it comes to your child emotionally and physically, they're not as fragile as you think they are. They're much stronger. They're much more resilient than you think they are. Now, there are things you can do that are seriously bad that will screw up your child in a serious way that will involve counseling. Hopefully, you're not doing any of those. If you're a reasonable parent, you're not doing those. Your child is going to pick up some of your bad habits. They're going to pick up some of your bad attitudes. You're going to inflict on them some stuff that they got to spend their life growing out of. That's how it works. That's the game we play. But if you're not doing the big, stupid stuff to your kid's going to be okay. You're not going to make one mistake that scars them for life. You're not going to pick the wrong birthday cake for their 4th birthday, and they're going to be done with life. You're not going to pick the wrong Power Ranger costume for them at Halloween, and they're going to spend their entire life mad at you because of that costume. Right? Some things are stresses you bring on yourself. And wisdom and honesty are to say, you know what? I need to take a chill pill on this one. Because I will be the best parent that I can be, and they will make decisions on their own as they grow up. And there's only so much I can control. And I'm going to pray a lot, and I'm going to trust God a lot, and I'm going to model the best that I can for them. And they're going to be screwed up. But they're probably not going to be any more screwed up than I am. And I can live with that. Does that make sense? Take a deep breath. Look at your child. Your child's not perfect. They're not going to become perfect. Quit trying to make it happen. You're just stressing everybody out. Some of you are stressing everybody out. Some of you stress out people around you too. So quit it. Just quit it. Okay? Also, you might be stressing about this. There are no perfect couples. We don't come in that flavor either. Okay? You can look at this couple and go, oh, they have it so together. I so want to be that couple. No. I said this in a staff meeting, and somebody in the staff freaked out. I said, I'm not a really good husband. And they went, really? They okay. I got to thinking about it. Here's the thing. I'm not playing in the T-ball league when it comes to being a husband. I do have a bar that's relatively high what I expect for myself as a husband. But in the non-T-ball league where you decide you're going to stay with your spouse and you're going to love her and you're going to do the best you can, I screw up all the time as a husband. Okay, I married a saint and a half. Okay? And so, I won the lottery on wives. But still, that doesn't make us a perfect couple, and that doesn't make me a perfect husband or her a perfect wife. Okay? You are married. You're going to get this point. You're a screwed up person married to a screwed up person. Okay? You can't put that together and get perfect. You just cannot do it. It will not fit into that particular configuration. So don't try to be a perfect couple. Try to be a loving couple. Try to be a good couple. Try to be a couple that honors each other and cares for each other. Do all those things, but don't look around at the couples you think are amazing. They just bury their crap better than you do. Okay? They've just learned not to let you see it. And some of the really good ones are laughing like, yeah, that's what we do. Okay? So quit putting this stressful expectation on yourself that somehow you can be the perfect couple, and that if you ever fight or you ever have problems or you ever feel distant from each other, that you're a failure. You're just human. So let yourself be human in your marriage. Now, there are stupid things you can do in a marriage. We talked about some of those last week. Talk about some more next week. But general rule, you're probably going to be okay if you try. If you quit trying to be perfect, putting stress on yourself. Now, there are real stresses, though. Things that really should stress you out in your marriage. Your work situation will from time to time stress you out, for real. If you're in the deployment cycle as a military family, that's real stress. Okay? You got kids growing up, there's real stress with that just because you got kids and you're worried and you're praying and you're hoping and there's real stress. There are lots of things that bring real stress into your life. Election cycle. But everything, all these stresses are real. Be honest about them, but don't bring in things, that makes sense? Don't bring in things that aren't stressful. Now, what do you do with the real stresses? What do you do with the things that are real stresses? Here's what you don't do. We're talking honesty. You don't do denial. Denial won't help in real stresses. Again, don't worry, be happy. Nobody really knows this. You know that song, Don't Worry, Be Happy? It was sarcastic. The guy who wrote it was being sarcastic when he wrote it. He wasn't saying, this is the mantra you should live your life by. He was kidding. Because life don't work that way. So what do? I'm not going to be stupid. I'm going to use my logical brain to apply to my problems, my stresses. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to look at the real problems. I'm going to learn what things aren't stresses, and I'm going to deal with those. Can I give you something? This is free. This is actually a leadership principle, but it'll apply to your marriages and your life in general. There are two things in life. You have problems to be solved and tensions to be managed. Problems to be solved and tensions to be managed. A problem to be solved is the toilet in the upstairs bathroom is clogged. I can fix that, and it's no longer a problem. Tensions to be managed is I married a slob. Okay? Counseling cannot help. Okay? If somebody's naturally less of a clean freak than the other one, that's a tension you're going to have your entire marriage. You're not going to fix it. You're going to manage it. Does that make sense? Do you see the difference? A tension to be managed is, okay, I'm in a military family and my husband deploys every so often. You're not going to fix that. You're going to manage it. You're not going to fix it. Does that make sense? If it didn't, just forget about it. It was just free. I just threw it in there. Here's the big thing you do about it, though. That whole passage in Titus was talking about this. Don't fly solo. Don't be stupid. Own your problems. Don't fly solo. If you look that whole passage, what was it about? This group helping this group do this. It said older women must train younger women. Hebrews 10, 24 and 25 says, let us consider how to stir one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. See, a lot of times we have this idea. Well, let me give you an illustration. Kim and I will be married 20-some years. Let's see, 27 years this week. And on our wedding, on our honeymoon, we were in this little cabin, and there was a fireplace. And you know what would be cool and romantic? A fire. So it took some kindling wood. It's not going to go where you think it is. I can't actually build a fire occasionally if I have the right things like gasoline and matches. And I'm putting the stuff in, and the fire grate that held the wood in place had been there a while, and people had been dropping logs on it for years, and the top of one of the poles had gotten really, really sharp with time. And I reached in, and I cut myself right there. And it was a good cut. It really was a good cut. And Kim went into nurse mode. Oh, let me see it. Let me help you. Let's just... But when I get hurt, I don't go into nursing mode. I go into big old bear mode. And I want to go into my cave, and I want to lick my wound and leave me alone, and when it's better, I will come back out. Anybody relate to that? I'm sitting there, and she's been nursing. I said, oh, give me this, this, and this, because I need to wrap this up, do this to it, then I'm going to crawl in a hole, and I'll come out when I'm healed. Anybody do that when you're stressed, when there's problems in your life? Start withdrawing, pulling away from people. Or you think you're supposed to put up a strong front and pretend I got this under control. I got this, I've done this a million times. I am such an amazing person. It's under control. Nobody does that, right? Well, what did he say to do? Help each other out. Be honest with other people. Let me tell you this. You're gonna like this. You need 3 kinds of friends. To get you through stress, you need 3 kinds of friends. You need wise friends, you need wine friends, and you need wide-eyed friends. Okay? Wise friends. A wise friend is someone who has already been where you are going. A wise friend is somebody who's already been where you are going. Let's say you've got a kid who's 1.5 years old, which means they're approaching 2 years old. And you've heard the legends. You know the urban myths. You've seen this on Facebook. What's one of the best things you can have in your life as your child approaches the terrible 2s? A friend who somehow did not kill their children when they were 2. Right? That's the best thing you can have, is somebody who made it through with their children still alive. Did not at any point choke the life. If those kind of friends are invaluable. And if you're like young military and having a family who's been through, like the Martins have been through all these deployments, having somebody who can say, oh yeah, we had that problem, here's what we did. When your children start hitting puberty, God bless you. It is really good to have some friends who have come out safely on the other side of that tumultuous ocean. So you need some wise friends. You need some wine friends. Now, I only use wine because it works. Wine friends are the friends you can laugh with. The friends you can just relax. You don't have to, it has nothing to do with wine, but it just sounds good, right? The people that you can sit around in a circle and tell each other jokes and tell each other your stories about what your 2-year-old just did, and you can just laugh. If you don't have anybody in your life where you can just sit down and talk about anything and laugh about it, you're missing a big point of what this is about. You need people in your life who are wise friends, and you need people who are wine friends, and you need people who are wide-eyed friends. And the wide-eyed friends are the ones who haven't even been where you're at yet. Okay? In the same way that there are people who can pour into you and help you make it through the time that you're getting ready to go into, you need some people in your life who haven't been anywhere yet. You need some people who, when she's carrying the baby, you can talk to her about, oh yeah, this is what pregnancy's like. Oh, I remember that. See, just switch it. You need people who pour into you, and you need people who you can pour into. And here's the challenge that we face, is a lot of times we tend to circle up in groups of people who are just like us. In other words, a lot of our connection groups tend to be people in the same life stage. And we sit around and show each other pictures of our grandkids, okay, or sonograms, right? And we're missing that. If we're not careful, if that's all we allow ourselves to do, we're missing the opportunity for somebody to teach us and help us through, and we're missing the opportunity for us to help somebody else. Do you see how that's a problem? One real way, this is cool, one of the ways that really can help in that is the ministries we have. Like if you're serving in children's ministry, chances are you're serving with some people that are older than you and some people that are younger than you. Some people who haven't been anywhere and some people who have been everywhere. If you're serving in First Impressions, you're going to run into people like that. If you're serving in the worship team, any ministry doesn't divide up that way. And so look for that. Look for the people, because that's the tool God gives us to get us through life. It's not to sit there and go, I got it all, I'm going to make it, I'm stuffing through, Quit it. There's stuff that scares you. There's stuff that stresses you. There's stuff that worries you. Don't be stupid, right? Be honest, and quit trying to fly solo. Now let me give you a quick commercial, because sometimes you hit a problem that's a little bigger than just not flying solo. You know what I'm saying? You'll hit a challenge in a marriage, in a family, that just talking to a neighbor is not going to help. And for that, we've got our family life coaching ministry. And if you're in a situation in your marriage and your family where you're hitting a wall and you can't seem to get through that wall, well then talk to somebody who knows more than you. I think Tim's going to be here into the service. And if you want to be part of check into our family life coaching to help you come up with a strategy and a plan to use your logic brain to get through it, that's a great opportunity, great idea. Now, don't be stupid. What was the second one? Own your stuff. And the third one, don't fly solo. Now, as I will tell you pretty much every sermon, there's one more piece that weaves through everything that we talk about. And that is the fact that you were created by God and that everything in your life works best if you're in a relationship with Him. We talked last week about how if two people are here and here, as they move toward Christ, they'll naturally move together. If you're raising kids and you're raising them to be like Christ, it makes your life easier. And if you're ready to talk to somebody about having a relationship with Christ, if you've been here before, you know how we do this. If you're ready to have that conversation, all we ask you to do is grab one of these blue bags. We have some in both corners of the stage. We have some back on those bookshelves. And if you grab one of these, somebody who's trained is going to come up to you. They're going to take about 10 minutes. They'll help you unpack the bag and show you how to have a relationship with Christ. Okay? Now, if you have the relationship with Christ, it's good to be baptized to announce that to people. We do that the first Wednesday of every month. Just let us know. We'll get you plugged into there. But on the spiritual component, one thing I talked about some that needs talking about more is the concept of prayer. Praying together as a couple, praying together with friends, praying together as a family. And sometimes just praying. And if there's something came up today that you want to pray about specifically, we have a cross over there, and the point of that is a place for you to go pray. And if during this next song you want to pray about something, you want to take your spouse with you, or you're going to go pray for your spouse, or pray for your kids, or whatever. That's what that's for. You can go just pray. If you want to pray with somebody, we got some people over there. We'll be glad to pray with you if you'll just approach them and say, hey, would you pray with me? We've also got communion stations, one in the front, one in the back, to remind you of what Christ did for you, so that you've got that encouragement that the God of the universe is kind of on your side when it comes to this stuff. Now, you are not going to escape stress. There is no magic wand that makes it go away. There's not a book out there that will make the stresses in your relationships go away or the stresses in your life go away. That doesn't happen. God never promises He'll take away stress, but He says He'll help us make a way through it. And one of the ways, and a key way, that we make our way through it is don't be stupid, own your stuff, and never attempt to fly solo.